elevator music.
1, 2, you know what to do.
Alright.
The Industrial Revolution. Oh, got that revolution. Industrializing. All other revolutions are so jealous. Ooh, Industrial Revolution. Aha. The Industrial Revolution was the transformation of the economy, environment, and living conditions that occurred in 18th century England and soon moved across the world. It resulted in steam engines, mechanization of many factories, and innovations and inventions in transportation and in communication. The Industrial Revolution proved to change the world forever. Now, the pottery industry is a very good example when we're talking about mass production. Because remember, mass production is achieved by division of labor, which was first introduced by Josiah Wedgwood. He was the master of using division of labor. Basically, division of labor is dividing tasks into simple and repetitive tasks. So it increases productivity and efficiency, thus the buyer is able to purchase these goods at a cheaper price, and the manufacturer is able to make them cheaply. And then middle-class people can buy high-quality pottery that was once only available to for high-class people from. Now, the part that the iron industry specifically played in the Industrial Revolution was more of the process of finding ways to improve upon it. And so first you see the coke, which was basically coal, and it was cooked up and all the impurities were cooked out of it. It was used in place of charcoal, but it really wasn't very efficient because it was very cheaply made. And it's a good thing that it was made cheap, but it was bad because it didn't hold well. And so then you see it improved upon coke iron by the use of puddling. Henry Court introduced this, and this just revolutionized this industry because basically it's when you use these iron rods and you stir it up, it makes it so much easier, and it's a very efficient and quick process, and so it holds well, and the coke iron was much more efficient. Iron also proved to have lots of functions, really. You actually see Abraham Darby's grandson, he's the third Abraham Darby, construct a bridge which is made entirely out of iron. And also you see the Crystal Palace, which was like a big greenhouse in London. And so people just marveled at the use of iron.
During the Industrial Revolution and evolution of solutions, there was a really hard social class for women. They were treated as subordinate to men, to people, even poor people. They would work in factories, very low wages, very hard hours, very horrible working conditions. And this is the time when we see the cult of domesticity come about in women, where they were treated and supposed to act subordinate to men, be seen, not heard, and follow close rules, and treated like
Professor Farnsworth, just calm down. Feel the fuzzy wall. Feel it. Calm. There we go. There we go.
The steam engine was improved upon by James Watt in 1764. He invented something called the condenser, and that made the steam engine effective and used for practical uses like transportation and other things.
Now, industrialization was good in Britain, that's where it all started. But the important thing to remember is that America followed back on it, and America really followed through. Because what you see is that inventors is basically the time period for them to prosper is during the Industrial Revolution because of all the other inventions and innovations going on. And America proved to be the place for inventors to live and prosper because it offered a government that wasn't available for
working conditions and way of life were unbelievably disgusting and awful. The streets were filthy, and rates of death were unbelievable. So many people dying at young ages, children in factories dying, mothers bringing in their young babies and drugging them to make sure they don't make noise while they're working all day. And what did the politicians do? As science goes up, so does industry. Through Great Britain. One of them was the Factory Acts of 1833. This act improved the conditions of many factories during this time and made the age of factory workers higher so that young children weren't working in factories. Also along those lines were the Mines Act of 1842, which made it illegal for women to work in the coal mines as well as young children. The Hungry 40s were a time in Britain where the harvest was bad and a lot of poor and middle-class people were not being fed the right way.
The class that actually benefited from the Industrial Revolution was really the middle class, because before in Britain, you saw that it was just the gentry and the merchants that made their money and that were really wealthy, and the gentry is just like kind of like old money passed down. They were always wealthy. But with the Industrial Revolution, it was so easy to just start a manufacturing company, and it could be self-expensed. And so then you would see people that were like, you know, the son of like a shopkeeper, a shoemaker, and you would see them able to start this business, and then it just started a whole entire new class of people. And so it wasn't that large of a gap between the wealthy and the very poor.
Early railroad systems were fast growing. They started off as being like slow engines with not very many tracks, but then the tracks became vast, and it was always a race for new inventors to invent an easier, faster way of using railroads and using trains and steam engines and coal and more efficient ways of doing so.
Since we're talking about ways to improve upon the poor, make them less poor, it's really important to introduce the idea of positivism, which was actually kind of considered a radical idea. The French came up with it. They were actually really concerned with the poor. They were like, oh, how can we fix this? And really it's the idea that scientific method and innovation and experiment will be able to fix many problems like technological, economic, and thus the poor will prosper. And so I mean, there's lots of satires based off of this because it was highly criticized and like kind of assumed to be similar to optimism, but yeah, it kind of went along the same way. Industrialization also probably had one of the greatest impacts on the towns, because then we really see one of the fastest population booms ever, because these towns went from like dainty little towns of like say 10,000 to like millions of people. A great example is Manchester, also New York, Brooklyn. So we also, not only in Britain do we see it, but also in America. And I mean, it really, like, you might think, oh, that's great, but no, it had a terrible impact on the people. I mean, people would throw out their trash out the window. There was terrible, you know, sewage problems, and it was just really filthy. I mean, everywhere. And because it was so quickly, and the increase was in poor areas, it really did not have a good effect at all. You know, you would see water being not clean, and then also railroads were in the towns too, which was like all noisy, and it would emit like smoke, and so you would have like just like a bad environment, and it really was unhealthy for the people. And you saw that suffering with the death rates and like how high they were, and like how the average of death was high too.